Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. And tonight we're going to begin with an I Told You So. I told you so about Jeralean Talley. In our ongoing series on the world's oldest people, we lost Messiah Wakawa earlier this year, then 5 days later we lost Gertrude Weaver, and now only a couple weeks after that we've lost Jeralean Talley, who died at the age of 116 in Inkster, Michigan. Miss Talley was one of the last surviving people to have been born in the 19th century, and here's a little bit on her in happier times when she was only 115 from Detroit television.
This woman is now the oldest verified person in the world. Jeralean Talley was born back in 1899. Of course, she has seen an incredible amount of history during her life, but said airplanes are one of her favorite innovations.
And when we asked her what she likes to eat, she said she enjoys fruit cups and stays away from cheese and butter. She also drinks coffee every day and always has it served the same way.
I don't want nothing in my coffee but some sugar. Make my coffee and put me some sugar in it. That's all. Don't put no cream in it.
No cream. You heard her. Jeralean will celebrate her 116th birthday on May 23rd this year. She said she credits God for allowing her to live this long.
Oh, I love her. So much spunk.
Yeah, and we hope
got to take notes, right?
Many more.
Yes.
116
no
and many more. Yeah.
All right.
You know, this is becoming almost a feature, and one of the things you can count on, I've noticed, is these really idiotic, inane remarks from these young anchors when they report on the oldest living person. Anyway, I don't want to put a hex on Miss Susie, Susanna Mouchette Jones from Brooklyn, New York, who becomes the world's oldest living person. She's only 115. She'll turn 116 in a couple of weeks, and I hope against hope we're not doing her podcast anytime soon. We're going to move on now to Doris Hart, who died recently at the age of 89. She was one of the great female tennis players of the 1940s and 1950s, and she accomplished something that had never been done before and will probably never be done again, the greatest single day in modern tennis, when she won the women's singles, the women's doubles, and the mixed doubles all in one day at Wimbledon in 1951. Because of rain, they had to schedule those all on the same day to fit the men's singles in on the final day, and that'll probably never happen again. And Doris Hart beat Shirley Fry, who at that time was the top player in the world.
2 match points to Doris Hart. Just about to come up now. She serves it right. Backhander by Fry into the net, and it's all over. And a machine-like victory. 6-1, 6-love. Doris Hart of America, seeded number 3, new Wimbledon champion.
Then with Shirley Fry as her partner, they went on to win the women's doubles after that. She also had some spirited matches in the 50s against her main rival, Maureen Little Mo Connolly.
Second one, Connolly, forehand across the court. Hart, the same, forehand across the court. Connolly, forehand. Hart, backhand.
Here is Doris Hart serving with match point.
One of the most amazing things about Doris Hart's career is that when she was a little girl, she had osteomyelitis of the right knee. Same problem Mickey Mantle had. They thought she wouldn't walk for a while. In fact, they thought they had to amputate her leg, but they finally drained the abscess. And as she was in the hospital, she watched people playing tennis outside. And that's where she got the idea to play tennis, so she picked it up late. And in fact, her whole career, she couldn't move like the other players because of that knee. But she compensated with a powerful forehand and the best drop shot in the game. We're going to move on now to John David Crow, who died recently at the age of 79. He was the greatest football player in Texas A&M history. I know you got your Dot Nguyen fans out there and your Johnny Manziel fans. John David Crow was the first Texas A&M player to win the Heisman Trophy. He won it in 1957, beat out Alex Karras, whose podcast we've done, by the way. He was playing for Bear Bryant at the time. Bear Bryant was coaching Texas A&M. And the next year, Bear Bryant moved to Alabama. He was the number 2 draft choice of the Chicago Cardinals, so he played here in Chicago for a couple years at Comiskey Park. Then the Cardinals moved to St. Louis. He played for them and ultimately for the 49ers. He was fast, he was tough, and he could come out of the backfield and catch the ball. In fact, he was one of the best running backs in football in the early 60s. The problem was he was eclipsed by Jim Brown, Jim Taylor, and Paul Hornung. He was an amazing guy, and he was also an academic All-American. Here's Texas Television to talk about Texas A&M's John David Crow. Even though the guy calls him a quarterback, he was a running back.
Aggies at the Tennessee 39. John Crow hammers over right tackle, so close to a first down.
Aggies are mourning the loss of a legend. Texas A&M's first Heisman Trophy winning quarterback John David Crow. He lettered in football at Texas A&M in 1955, 56, and 57. Crow won the Heisman Trophy in 57, playing for head coach Paul Bear Bryant. Back in 2012, Darrell Bruffett sat down for a visit with Crow. The story of a game against TCU came up.
It was raining so hard and wind was blowing so hard and so forth. When we went in at halftime, they were going to change jerseys. They didn't have another number 44. They just grabbed the jersey and gave it to me, and I put it on and went out. And fortunately, we came back and we won the game, and I happened to be one that caught the pass, winning touchdown.
Crow made a lot of big plays wearing an Aggie jersey, as well as jerseys of the Cardinals and 49ers during an 11-year NFL career. Many football fans know the name John David Crow, but never saw him play live. His old friends and teammates have their own way of describing John David Crow, the football player.
He'd knock your head off. He was tough. He was a big, strong guy, you know, from Louisiana, but not that made him any tougher. Texas boys are tough, too, but he was a great player, you know. And, of course, Coach Bryant, as we all know, recruited him out of Louisiana and probably had a battle for him. I think he was thinking of Oklahoma and LSU. He was putting a lot of pressure on him.
For a guy like me who was a guard blocking for him, that was a good job because he was such a great runner. I had Crow, who goes on to make a Heisman, was, to me, one of the highlights about my football life.
It doesn't matter if you hear from football people or non-football people. Everybody says, what a great man.
JDC, of course, John David Crow. He was an AD for A&M when R.C. Slocum was head football coach.
He made good impressions on the people that met him. People respected his humbleness. When the notion of awards or a Heisman or any of those things came up, he was very quick to deflect.
We're going to move on now to our feature tonight. Ron Clarke, who died recently at the age of 78, one of the greatest middle distance runners in history, even though he never won a gold medal. As a young runner, he didn't make the Olympics in Melbourne in 1956, although he did light the Olympic flame. He didn't run in 1960. 1964, he was upset by American Billy Mills, and in 1968, the elevation in Mexico City got to him. But he set a slew of world records, and he was widely recognized as one of the great sportsmen in Australian history. Here's a little bit of frontline on his career.
On the afternoon of November 22nd, 1956, the Duke of Edinburgh opens the 16th Olympic Games in Melbourne.
There was all this secrecy about who was carrying the torch, and nobody knew, and that, I think, added to the drama of the thing. It didn't enter my head that I'd be asked. And then somebody rang me out of the blue about 2 weeks before and said, we've selected you as a representative of Young Australia or something. So I think it was only because I was young and had a few world records, and unfortunately had missed the game. So I would much prefer to be a non-entity marching around and being a competitor than carrying a torch and being in the opening ceremony.
After the Melbourne Games, Clarke retired for 5 years, missing the 1960 Rome Olympics. Then in 1961, he came out of retirement and began an incredible string of world record-breaking performances. Many experts predicted that he would outperform his idol, Czechoslovakia's Emil Zatopek, who won 4 gold and 1 silver medal in 2 Olympics, in the 5,000, 10,000, and marathon. But in Tokyo and Mexico City, Clarke failed, winning just 1 bronze medal in 5 Olympic races. But on a visit to Prague, it was the legendary Emil Zatopek who recognized Ron Clarke's position as one of the greatest runners of all time.
We got on the plane, and he had this little package, and he shook me by the hand, sort of said, you deserve this. So I just sort of mumbled my thanks and said what a great time I had, etc. When I got over near London, I couldn't wait any longer, so I sort of sneaked a look at it. It was all wrapped up in brown paper, took off the brown paper, and here's one of his 3 Olympic medals he won in 52. It was just the gesture of the man recognising the bad luck I'd had and paying a tribute to me, which I think was the greatest compliment that I've ever received, and it's something I value, more than any other possession I've ever got.
So Ron Clarke's amazing career began at age 19 at the Melbourne Cricket Ground. It is ironic that Ron Clarke, considered by many the greatest long-distance runner in history, the holder of 19 world records, received a gold medal without ever winning an Olympic race, and received the greatest acclaim of his entire career on a day he did not compete, the opening day of the Melbourne Olympic Games.
Ron Clarke was also involved in one of the most famous incidents in Australian sports history when he was a young man running in a race with the great miler John Landy.
The young athlete later had contact with the Aussie example of the day, John Landy.
I remember he wrote me a 5-page letter on training, and the start of it saying, I'm sorry, but on my way overseas, this will be just a quick note because I'm told you're interested in learning some training. And went on for 5 pages. I mean, it's a sort of guy Landy was, really describing the way, not giving you sessions, but describing on the way you should cope with training. Really very essential. The essence of simplicity. Don't train too hard and don't make it too easy.
He was very much a hero of yours, wasn't he?
Yeah, it still is. John was feeling a bit guilty because he didn't get out and lead, and often because the crowd had come to see him run well, he had this guilty complex as well about it. He was feeling rotten, yet he was still following. I tried to move up on Plummer and move out because there's only about 1.5 laps to go to get on his shoulder, ready to actually take off. And when I switched, Henderson, who was tight behind me, clipped my heels, so I fell sideways that way, and he fell in on the edge of the track. He stayed on his feet because he was balanced in that he clipped him with my right foot and he fell on his left. I fell right in front of the field and they all jumped me, and Landy, in fact, landed on my arm and tore my arm. He landed with his spikes on my arm. That's what he was concerned. Landy came back. I got up, said, nothing wrong. And then Landy took off as well. Landy, when he turned, hit the curb and bruised his foot.
After helping Clarke back up, Landy went on to win the race.
World's greatest miler, John Landy. There's a jostling start, and Landy's in the middle of the field when they settle down, though he's quickly going up to fifth. Morgan Morris of Victoria is the early leader from Clarke, Victoria, and Henderson, New South Wales. Plummer is making up ground, and Landy, 112, is running easily just behind the leaders. The first lap takes 59 seconds. They pass the halfway mark in 2 minutes, 2 seconds, and then there's a sensation. Exclusive picture of Clarke's fall, made available by courtesy of the Melbourne Sun. Landy ran on a few strides and then came back to help his fallen opponent. A truly magnificent gesture of sportsmanship. Recovering, Landy runs off the track slightly, but is soon back, chasing the leaders, to whom he's given a good 35-yard start. Plummer's gone to the front now, with Henderson coming at him, and Landy still 20 yards behind him, but gaining with every stride. The crowd is wild with excitement. Never has there been such a race. With giant strides, the world champion races past Henderson and puts in a paralyzing burst as he sprints for the tape, drawing away yard by yard despite a bruised instep and the loss of at least 5 seconds in the fall. He's a great champion, all right, champion runner and true sportsman. He sacrificed all chance of a new record. He's risked disqualification by stepping off the track, but he's still first to the tape, and still the champion. Landy's first thought up the race is for Clarke, whose arm was spiked during the race. It's not a Landy record this time, but it's a miracle run all the same.
You don't see that kind of sportsmanship anymore, that's for sure. There's a statue of Landy reaching out to help Clarke in front of a sports complex in Melbourne. It's one of the most famous statues in Australia. I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. I'm going to close with Kirk Kerkorian, who died recently at the age of 98. Nice Jewish boy from Fresno. He was for a time the richest man in California, one of the richest men in the world because of his holdings in Las Vegas. Here's Las Vegas television to talk about Kirk Kerkorian.
Today, Las Vegas lost a legend in the resort industry. Kirk Kerkorian has died.
He passed away last night in Los Angeles. He was the billionaire behind a number of hotels on the Strip. Without him, Las Vegas would not be the same today. Fox 5's Ophelia Young is outside the MGM Grand.
Right, John and Christine, when the MGM Grand opened back in December of '93, it was the biggest hotel in the world. Today, debatably, it still is. Making Las Vegas the biggest and the best, that is the mentality Kirk Kerkorian brought to the Strip, and he did it ever so quietly. Shy but powerful, he is the biggest builder the Strip has ever seen. Not only was he the landlord for huge hotels like Caesar's Palace, he built, at the times of their openings, the world's largest hotels. The International, which is now the Westgate, then the original MGM Grand, which is now Bally's, and the new MGM Grand, now standing at over 6,000 rooms, including the Signature Towers.
Kirk Kerkorian was the first person who said, I want to build the world's largest hotel in Las Vegas. And I think we still have that mindset now, where we've got a couple of contenders for world's biggest hotel complex, and I think without that, Las Vegas is a much smaller city. It doesn't think as big. Kirk Kerkorian always thought big.
Now MGM Resorts International has hotels around the world. That was just one of Kerkorian's ventures. He flew World War II planes, bought the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's movie studio, owned what is now airline company Transamerica, and had partial ownerships in the auto industry.
He didn't do it in a flashy way. He didn't do it in a headline-grabbing way. He also gave a lot of money to philanthropy.
He rarely gave interviews, even though he is one of the richest men in Los Angeles. He was probably the most private.
We're not going to see anyone like him who flew planes during World War II, who worked with Jay Sarno, who was a rival to Howard Hughes, and built so much. I don't think we're ever going to see somebody like him again.
Well, we've played Viva Las Vegas before, so tonight to honor Kirk Kerkorian, we're going to play one of my favorite songs by the Vogues, written by Barry Mann about a magic town.
They set me on